There are heroes in American history that you were never meant to know about. Soldiers who made unthinkable sacrifices. Warriors who shaped history, but were written out of it. Men who fought, bled, and died for this country, only to be ignored. And it wasn't by accident. Some were erased because their stories were inconvenient. Others were buried under politics. And some were simply too powerful, too legendary, for the history books to handle. But today we're setting the record straight. We've compiled some of our most powerful stories, the ones they don't want you to hear, into one ultimate collection. This is The Soldiers They Refuse to Teach You About.
In the annals of American military history, countless heroes have risen, their deeds etched into the fabric of our nation. Yet, some stories remain less known, their contributions undervalued despite shaping the very freedoms we enjoy today. This video brings to light 7 of these unsung heroes, each awarded the Medal of Honor for their extraordinary valor, yet seldom celebrated in popular narratives. From daring aerial feats in World War I to covert operations in Cold War hotspots, these men demonstrated unparalleled courage and sacrifice. Through their stories, we explore the unheralded acts of bravery that maybe didn't make headlines, but were crucial in defining the outcomes of critical battles across different eras. Join us as we uncover the hidden legacies of these remarkable soldiers, whose heroic deeds are a testament to the spirit and resilience that characterize the best of America's military tradition. Joel Thompson Boone, a U.S. Navy lieutenant commander and physician, served with extraordinary valor and commitment during World War I, embodying the spirit of selflessness and duty that defines the best of military service. Boone was not just any doctor. He was a battlefield medic who consistently braved dangerous conditions to provide critical care under fire. On April 19, 1918, during the Battle of Vierzy in France, Boone demonstrated his heroic capabilities. Amidst heavy shell fire, he established an advanced aid station. With no regard for his own safety, he ventured repeatedly into the open battlefield to tend to the wounded. His actions during this fierce engagement were beyond the call of duty. He treated over 100 men, often exposing himself to enemy fire by carrying the injured to safety on his back. For his acts of bravery and his unwavering commitment to his fellow soldiers, Joel T. Boone was awarded the Medal of Honor. His citation notes his extraordinary heroism, conspicuous gallantry, and intrepidity at the risk of his own life above and beyond the call of duty, a testament to his dedication and valor. But Boone's service didn't end with World War I. He continued to serve in the Navy through World War II and the Korean War, adapting his medical expertise to meet the evolving challenges of warfare in different contexts. Notably, during the presidency of Herbert Hoover, Boone also served as the official White House physician, where he invented a game called Hooverball to help the president keep in shape. Through his lifelong dedication, Joel T. Boone exemplifies the role of military personnel as not only warriors, but also as protectors and healers, whose contributions resonate far beyond the confines of battle. John C. McCloy stands as one of the few individuals in U.S. military history to have been awarded 2 Medals of Honor, a testament to his exceptional bravery and dedication. McCloy's military career, marked by daring and strategic acumen, provides a compelling narrative of gallantry under fire. McCloy first made his mark during the Boxer Rebellion in 1900. As a coxswain in the U.S. Navy, he led a daring assault on the Taku forts, where he was instrumental in securing a strategic victory under intense fire. His leadership and courage during the operation earned him his first Medal of Honor, highlighting his willingness to face formidable odds with resolute bravery. However, it was not just in battle where McCloy's heroism was displayed. He earned his second Medal of Honor during the occupation of Veracruz in 1914, where he again demonstrated extraordinary heroism in combat. During this engagement, McCloy took command under heavy fire, organizing and leading a charge that resulted in the capture of an important custom house without the loss of a single man under his direct command. McCloy's actions went beyond sheer courage. They were characterized by a profound understanding of tactical warfare and leadership. His ability to inspire his men and lead from the front turned potentially perilous situations into decisive victories. John C. McCloy's dual recognitions with the Medal of Honor are emblematic of a career built on fearless leadership and a steadfast commitment to his comrades and country. Raymond G. Davis, a highly decorated officer of the United States Marine Corps, is best remembered for his exceptional leadership during the Korean War, particularly in the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. His actions during this critical confrontation not only saved countless lives, but also demonstrated tactical genius and unwavering courage. In late November 1950, then Lieutenant Colonel Davis was commanding the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. Amidst brutal winter conditions and facing overwhelming enemy forces, Davis led a daring nighttime march to relieve fellow Marines who were encircled by Chinese troops at the Chosin Reservoir. Navigating through mountainous terrain in sub-zero temperatures, Davis and his battalion fought through numerous enemy roadblocks to reach and reinforce the trapped Fox Company. Davis's leadership and strategic acumen were instrumental in breaking the encirclement. His ability to maintain morale among his troops, combined with his tactical decisions, were pivotal in not only ensuring the survival of Fox Company, but also in securing a tactical withdrawal that saved the larger Marine unit from potential annihilation. For his extraordinary heroism and leadership in Korea, Davis was awarded the Medal of Honor. Davis continued to serve with distinction, eventually rising to the rank of general and serving as the Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. His legacy is a testament to the impact that skilled and courageous leadership can have in times of crisis. Frank Luke Jr., known as the Arizona Balloon Buster, was America's second highest-scoring World War I ace. Luke was renowned for his daring aerial exploits, particularly his unparalleled ability to shoot down enemy observation balloons, which were heavily defended and critical to the war effort due to their role in artillery spotting. Enlisting in the aviation section of the U.S. Signal Corps, Luke quickly distinguished himself with his aggressive tactics and fearless attitude. Over the course of just a few weeks in September 1918, he achieved an astonishing record, shooting down 14 German balloons and 4 aircraft. His preference for challenging targets like balloons, which were guarded by anti-aircraft guns and enemy fighters, showcased his extraordinary bravery and skill. Luke's final mission epitomized his fearless nature. After being severely wounded during an aerial battle, Luke landed his plane in a nearby field. Surrounded by enemy troops, he fought valiantly on the ground with his pistol until he was ultimately overcome. For his incredible bravery and impact on the air war, Luke was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor and lives on in history as one of America's best air fighters ever. William J. Donovan, often referred to as Wild Bill Donovan, holds a unique place in American military and intelligence history. As the leader of the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA, Donovan was instrumental in laying the foundations of modern American espionage and special operations. His military career began with distinguished service in World War I, where he earned the nickname Wild Bill for his aggressive leadership and fearless conduct during combat. Donovan was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions during the Meuse-Argonne offensive, where he led a charge against a heavily defended position, continuously exposing himself to enemy fire to encourage his troops. After the war, Donovan's focus shifted to intelligence and unconventional warfare. As the head of the OSS during World War II, he was pivotal in establishing networks of spies across Europe and Asia, and in developing innovative tactics that would define covert operations. He championed the use of espionage, sabotage, and guerrilla warfare tactics that significantly contributed to the Allied victory. Henry L. Hulbert was a figure of extraordinary bravery and dedication in the U.S. Marine Corps, whose military career was marked by acts of incredible heroism that spanned from the Philippine-American War to World War I. Hulbert earned his Medal of Honor during the Philippine-American War for his extraordinary acts of bravery at the Battle of Pulang Lupa. On September 17, 1901, Hulbert demonstrated fearless conduct and remarkable courage in the face of overwhelming enemy forces. During this fierce battle, Hulbert, despite being under intense fire, managed to maintain composure and leadership. He led a daring charge that was crucial in repelling the insurgent forces, showcasing not only his personal bravery, but also his tactical acumen in combat. His actions directly contributed to the success of his unit's mission and exemplified the highest ideals of military service and sacrifice. This act of valor and exceptional leadership in combat was recognized with the Medal of Honor, underscoring his significant contributions and heroism, which left a lasting impact on his fellow servicemen and the history of the U.S. Marine Corps. Joe R. Hooper is one of the most decorated soldiers of the Vietnam War, whose acts of bravery and leadership earned him a staggering number of military accolades, including the Medal of Honor, 2 Silver Stars, 6 Bronze Stars, and 8 Purple Hearts. His actions in combat exemplify the extraordinary capabilities and courage of an individual soldier. Hooper's Medal of Honor action occurred on February 21, 1968, during a fierce assault in Hue. He led his men against a fortified enemy position, repeatedly braving intense enemy fire to attack with grenades and rifle fire. Over the course of the day, Hooper destroyed multiple enemy bunkers and accounted for a significant number of enemy soldiers killed. His fearless leadership and disregard for his own safety rallied his men to overcome overwhelming odds. After his military service, Hooper continued to advocate for veterans' rights and military excellence until his death in 1979. Joe R. Hooper's extraordinary feats in combat make his story not just a tale of individual heroism, but also a profound reminder of the resilience and bravery of the soldiers who fought in Vietnam. As we conclude our journey through the pages of American military history, we celebrate these 7 extraordinary individuals whose courage and sacrifice echo through the ages. Their stories are not just tales of the past, but guiding lights for future generations. As we draw inspiration from their bravery, let us continue to explore and honor the countless other heroes who have shaped our nation. Don't forget to subscribe and join us as we uncover more incredible stories of valor and heroism that define America's spirit.
In the dead of night on September 26, 1983, as most of the world slept, the fate of humanity hung by a thread. The Soviet Union's early warning systems suddenly signaled the launch of US missiles headed straight for Moscow. This was it. The unthinkable nightmare of nuclear war was seemingly becoming a reality. But what happened next was not an escalation into global catastrophe, but a breathtaking exercise in judgment by one man who stood between protocol and the possibility of a catastrophic mistake. Tonight, we dive deep into a night that almost ended the world. This is the story of the 1983 Soviet nuclear false alarm, a harrowing incident that reveals just how fragile our grip on survival can be. During the Cold War, the threat of nuclear war was a constant and looming presence. The arms race had escalated, with both the United States and the Soviet Union amassing vast arsenals of nuclear weapons, capable of destroying the world many times over. In this era of heightened alert, the margin for error was slim. Both nations developed sophisticated early warning systems designed to detect any incoming nuclear threat, ensuring they could retaliate before being struck. However, it was because of these systems that the world almost ended one September night in 1983. The Soviet Union's early warning system, known as OKO, was one of the most advanced of its time, a network of satellites equipped to detect missile launches from the United States. However, technology, no matter how advanced, is not immune to failure. On that fateful night, the system reported that 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles had been launched from the United States, targeting the Soviet Union. The report triggered an immediate and frantic response from the Soviet military's highest echelons, who now faced a decision that could lead to the end of human civilization. But amidst the chaos, one officer, Stanislav Petrov, held the responsibility of interpreting the signals. It was his actions that prevented a nuclear strike from being carried out on the United States. Inside the dimly lit Serpukhov 15 bunker, a palpable tension filled the air. The warning sirens had cut through the night's silence, suggesting an apocalypse was imminent, and each officer's face was etched with a mix of dread and resolve, aware that the decisions made in the next few minutes could dictate the fate of humanity. Stanislav Petrov, the duty officer, faced the screens showing the 5 supposed missiles hurtling towards the Soviet Union, thinking his worst nightmare had come true. The room buzzed with frantic energy, officers shouting commands, others contacting field units, everyone bracing for impact and readying their response. Despite the chaos, Petrov felt a gnawing suspicion. The protocol was clear. A counterattack must be launched to preempt the American strike. Yet the information didn't add up for Petrov. Only 5 missiles? Such an attack didn't match the expected all-out offensive that would truly threaten Soviet retaliatory capabilities. The state of international relations at the time also didn't signal an attack was coming. There were no immediate tensions or incidents that might logically precede a full-scale nuclear assault. Petrov's military instinct screamed that something was amiss. Petrov's decision-making was about more than military strategy, though. It was deeply personal. Each officer in the bunker knew that their families, friends, and compatriots would also be under the shadow of the same missiles. With each passing second, the pressure mounted exponentially. Petrov's hand hovered over the phone, ready to call in the counter-strike order. Yet he hesitated, driven by a gut feeling that urged caution amidst the clamor for action. His choice to question the alert, to label it a false alarm, was a monumental risk, betting not just his career, but the lives of millions on his judgment. As the minutes ticked by, with no explosions shattering the tense silence of the bunker, relief slowly washed over the room. Petrov's gamble had paid off. It was indeed a false alarm triggered by a rare alignment of sunlight on high-altitude clouds, misinterpreted by the satellite sensors as missile launches. The bravery to stand against protocol, to challenge the data when the stakes were apocalyptic, saved countless lives and prevented what could have been the most tragic misunderstanding in human history. The silence that filled the room after confirming the false alarm was profound. A catastrophic nuclear war had been averted, but the repercussions of that night would echo far beyond the confines of the bunker. In the immediate aftermath, Petrov faced both scrutiny and commendation. His superiors were unsettled by his unilateral decision to disobey direct protocol. An extensive investigation was launched to dissect every second of that night's events. The investigation concluded that the satellite system had indeed malfunctioned due to a rare atmospheric phenomenon, prompting a global discussion on the reliability of early warning systems. As a result of Petrov's actions and the subsequent findings, modifications were made to Soviet and eventually global nuclear command and control policies. These included enhanced checks and balances, improved satellite technology, and more rigorous training for officers in charge of similar decision-making scenarios. The incident also sparked a broader philosophical debate about the reliance on automated systems in the execution of warfare and the indispensable value of human oversight. Decades later, the world continues to grapple with the questions raised because of that night. As nations modernize their arsenals and develop new technologies, the story of Stanislav Petrov remains a powerful reminder of the moral and ethical responsibilities that come with the power to unleash or prevent global annihilation. As we reflect on the harrowing events of that fateful night in 1983, it becomes clear that the line between peace and global devastation can be perilously thin. The actions of a single individual, Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, demonstrate the profound impact that ethical judgment and moral courage can have on the course of history. Petrov's refusal to follow protocol, driven by his skepticism of automated systems and his commitment to human judgment, not only averted a potential nuclear war, but also sparked significant changes in the way military powers around the world manage their nuclear arsenals. The enhancements in checks and balances, satellite technology, and officer training are testaments to the lessons learned from the incident. The philosophical debates ignited by Petrov's actions continue to resonate today. In an era where the push for automated and AI-driven systems in military and civilian sectors is stronger than ever, the Petrov incident serves as a crucial reminder of the need for human oversight in matters of life and death. This 1983 dilemma poses us all a crucial question today. How much should we rely on technology, and when should human judgment take the lead? What do you think? Should there always be a human element in critical decision-making processes, especially when it comes to the use of lethal force? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more military analysis and commentary.
In the early hours of February 3, 1943, the USAT Dorchester, a converted civilian liner carrying over 900 men, was making its way through the icy, treacherous waters of the North Atlantic. It was a frigid night, and the threat of enemy submarines loomed large. Just before 1 a.m., a German U-boat fired a torpedo that struck the Dorchester amidships. The explosion was catastrophic, and chaos erupted as men scrambled for lifeboats, life jackets, and any chance of survival. Amidst the terror, 4 unlikely heroes emerged. The 4 chaplains, George L. Fox, Alexander D. Good, Clark V. Poling, and John P. Washington, were symbols of calm, courage, and selfless devotion in the wake of tragedy. Their story would become one of the most enduring tales of heroism in American military history. George L. Fox, known as Father Fox to those he served, was a Methodist minister born in Lewistown, Pennsylvania, in 1900. Fox was no stranger to sacrifice. During World War I, he lied about his age to enlist in the Army at just 17. He served as a medical corpsman and earned a Silver Star for valor as well as the Purple Heart. After the war, he became a successful accountant and family man with a peaceful life in Vermont. Then he answered a higher calling and became a minister, known for his gentle spirit and strong faith. Yet when America was once again at war, he told his wife, "I've got to go. I know from experience what our boys are about to face. They need me." He became a chaplain, never to return home to Vermont. Rabbi Alexander D. Good was a brilliant scholar and a passionate advocate for interfaith understanding. Born in Brooklyn, New York in 1911, Good pursued an impressive academic career, earning degrees from the University of Cincinnati, Hebrew Union College, and Johns Hopkins University. Good's wife once said he dreamed of a world where people of all faiths could live together in harmony. He practiced what he preached, often going out of his way to connect with people from diverse backgrounds. His dedication to building bridges of understanding would become a hallmark of his service, both as a rabbi and as a chaplain in the Army. Clark V. Poling, the youngest of the 4 chaplains, was born in Columbus, Ohio in 1910. Poling was the son of a minister and the 7th generation in his family to enter the clergy. Poling had a vibrant, optimistic personality that endeared him to soldiers and civilians alike. A minister of the Reformed Church of America, he believed deeply in the power of faith to guide people through even the most difficult circumstances, and his determination to serve others would come to define his final moments aboard the Dorchester. Before leaving for war, he told his father to pray not for my safe return. That wouldn't be fair. I just pray that I shall do my duty, never be a coward, and have the strength, courage, and understanding of men. Just pray that I shall be adequate. That prayer was abundantly answered on that fateful day. John P. Washington, a Catholic priest from Newark, New Jersey, was known for his gregarious personality and love of music. Born in 1908, Washington grew up in a tough neighborhood but always dreamed of becoming a priest. His compassion and deep sense of duty made him a natural leader among his parishioners. Soldiers remembered him for his booming voice, often leading them in song to lift their spirits. Washington's unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity and his ability to connect with people on a deeply personal level would be instrumental during the fateful night of the Dorchester's sinking. So what happened that night that moved so many? As the Dorchester began to sink, the ship's crew struggled to maintain order. The bitter cold and darkness made the situation even more dire. Many of the soldiers on board were young, inexperienced, and terrified. The 4 chaplains moved swiftly into action, providing guidance and comfort to those around them. Survivors recall that the chaplains organized lifeboat boarding and handed out life jackets. When the supply of life jackets ran out, the chaplains removed their own and gave them to other soldiers. One survivor, Private First Class John Ladd, described the scene. "It was the finest thing I have seen or hope to see this side of heaven." The chaplains continued to pray, sing hymns, and offer words of encouragement as the ship went down. Clinging to each other for support, they stood on the deck, arms linked, and their voices rose above the chaos. Another survivor, Private First Class William Bednar, said, "Their voices were the only thing that kept me going." In the days and weeks that followed, the heroism of the 4 chaplains captured the hearts of the nation. Newspapers reported their selfless acts, and their story became a symbol of unity and sacrifice. President Harry S. Truman once remarked that the chaplains' actions represented the unity of the nation, which is the foundation of our American democracy. The effort to officially honor the chaplains began shortly after the war. In 1948, the U.S. Congress established the Four Chaplains Medal, which was awarded posthumously to Fox, Good, Poling, and Washington. This special medal is considered equivalent to the Medal of Honor, but was created to recognize acts of valor by individuals not engaged in combat. In 1988, Congress unanimously designated February 3rd as Four Chaplains Day, ensuring their legacy would be remembered for generations to come. Today, ceremonies, memorial services, and interfaith gatherings across the country honor their sacrifice. The story of the Four Chaplains is not just a tale of heroism, but a powerful reminder of the ideals that bind us together: faith, sacrifice, and unity. In a time when division often dominates the headlines, their actions serve as a timeless example of what it means to put the needs of others above one's own.
Captured, beaten, starved, but unbroken. What does it take to survive as a prisoner of war? To endure years of captivity, knowing that every day could be your last?
I spent 12 days evading. Okay, I was very weak. I didn't have any food.
Then the pain started coming in. It was excruciatingly painful.
I saw the worst scene I ever saw. A GI without a head.
I thought I was going to die.
These are the voices of American POWs, soldiers who faced the unimaginable and lived to tell their stories.
Warning: the following stories contain accounts of war, captivity, and survival. Viewer discretion is advised.
As a private in Fox Company, Tony Gargano found himself on the front lines of one of World War II's most desperate battles. Before dawn, Gargano and his comrades prepared to launch a surprise attack on the German front line. The air was thick with tension as artillery fire rained down. Chaos erupted when their commanding officers were killed by landmines, leaving the soldiers without leadership in the midst of battle.
And I said, what happened? He said, the captain stepped on the mine. Then what happened? He says, my lieutenant went after him. He stepped on a mine. Boom. And that we lost control because we got two good officers. Yeah, especially the captain.
Gargano was forced to crawl through a deadly minefield, following the footprints of those ahead of him. But even when he made it to shelter, safety was still fleeting. Encircled by German forces, the soldiers had no choice but to surrender after a failed attempt to signal peace. Captured and forced into a brutal 30-day march across enemy territory, Gargano endured unimaginable conditions. Food was scarce, and survival required seizing every opportunity, even if it meant risking everything.
We got on that little rope bridge. I looked over on the bank of the river. I saw the worst scene I ever saw. A GI without a head. His head was blown right off. That was sickening. Could you imagine this family back home having dinner, thinking about their son?
During the march, Tony used his Chicago wits to scrape up as much extra food as possible. His will to live pushed him through the adversity of this journey and ultimately got him home safely after being liberated by the Americans.
So I jumped off the train and got all the way home, walked in my house, and my parents didn't even know I was coming. They were shocked to see me. My mother almost fainted when she saw me. I couldn't believe it. I felt free. I felt like a big stone off of my chest.
On the 24th of April, we were attacked by a very large, superior numbered Chinese force of battalion strength, somewhat over 1,000 men. And it turned out that we had 88 men holding this outpost. The attack was ferocious. We were overrun. Hand-to-hand fighting occurred in all of the trenches. Very heavy losses were suffered on both sides. I was wounded 9 times, and 2 in the head, 6 in the legs, and once in the left arm. Very close fighting, hand grenades, bayonets. I thought I was going to die.
That was the point, when a Chinese gun aimed at him.
I looked up that barrel, and having been brought up in a family of faith, I knew what to do. I prayed the prayer of a sinner. Very quick, very short, not flowery, not poetic. Oh God, have mercy on my soul.
But instead of being killed, Private David Mills was captured by Chinese forces during the Korean War. Severely wounded and presumed dead, his family was informed of his loss, a message that rippled across the country. Yet Mills was alive, dragged away and dumped in a cave before being taken to a prisoner of war camp. Captured, isolated, wounded. For Private Mills, every moment of captivity was a battle for survival. Life in the camp was harsh. His faith carried him through the darkest moments as he endured hunger, pain, and uncertainty. Mills's prayers were answered, though his ordeal wasn't over. For months, he bore the physical and emotional scars of captivity. But after 4 grueling months, he was released, defying the odds. Mills returned home forever changed, a 17-year-old who had grown into a man overnight. The skies over Vietnam were among the most dangerous battlegrounds of the war. American pilots risked their lives with every mission, flying into hostile territory where enemy anti-aircraft fire could strike at any moment. For Lieutenant Michael Connor, the danger became all too real. Shot down during a mission, Connor was forced to eject into the dense, unforgiving jungle below. Alone, injured, and surrounded by enemy forces, his fate seemed sealed. But being captured was only the beginning of his ordeal. Connor was taken to a North Vietnamese prison camp, where he faced months of brutal conditions, interrogations, and an unrelenting battle to keep both his body and his spirit alive. In Connor's own words, he recounts the terror, the resilience, and the unyielding hope that carried him through his time as a prisoner of war.
We were on a mission outside of WWII and were shot down. The rest of my crew was killed, and I was severely injured, paralyzed on my left side, and escaped and evaded for a day and a half before I was captured. They gave me a crutch, and I was basically hobbling on one leg, and then the pain started coming in. It was excruciatingly painful. They figure I had a swelling of the brain from the head injury. And then I went through a series of camps. The hardest part I had was they kept me for about 2 weeks in this hole in the ground. It was on the side of a hill. They dug in, and it was about 2.5 feet wide by about 2 feet high. I was on a bamboo thing, and they put me in head first, and I could barely move. And if I tried to roll over, dirt would fall on my face. There were mosquitoes, centipedes, snakes, rats, everything that was in that thing. It was just hell.
Connor spent 5 years as a prisoner in Vietnam, enduring unimaginable conditions. The physical pain from his injuries was relentless, but it was the mental and emotional toll that tested him the most. Prisoners were isolated, starved, and subjected to brutal interrogations designed to break their spirits. Life in the camps was a constant battle against despair. Captives like Connor had to summon incredible inner strength to survive the day-to-day horrors. They clung to small acts of defiance, hope, and camaraderie to maintain their humanity.
And I can't talk about the experience without acknowledging all the brave folks that gave their lives at that time, because it was clearly an effort at that point to try to get us home. But anyway, we get to Gia Lam Airport, and I tell you, coming around that airport and seeing that American flag on a TEL 141, it was just awesome.
As the Vietnam War dragged into its final brutal months, American airmen took to the skies as part of Operation Linebacker 2, an intense bombing campaign designed to force North Vietnam to release U.S. POWs and agree to a ceasefire. Among those airmen was Captain Peter Camerata, serving as a bombardier. The mission was like countless others Camerota had flown, targeting enemy strongholds in the heavily defended skies over Hanoi. But this night was different. 50 miles northwest of the city, the unthinkable happened. Their aircraft was struck by a surface-to-air missile, and the crew was forced to eject into hostile territory.
My very first thought when my parachute opened, was, oh my God, I'm hanging in the straps here, and Joy is 10,000 miles away from home and pregnant, because she was with me in Thailand when I got shot. So that was my very first thought. I had 12 days evading. I was very weak. I didn't have any food. I was hallucinating. I was not sure whether I was awake or not. So I finally, on the 12th day, decided I was either going to die out here or I was going to give up. Now the code of conduct says you'll never surrender of your own free will. Well, I don't think I had any free will. I have a pretty strong faith in God, I think. I have great faith in my country. Always have. And the important things to me were those, and of course, and my family. And I wanted my wife to be taken care of. And I guess I've never lost faith in those things.
These four stories, though separated by decades and conflicts, share a common thread: resilience. From the muddy battlefields of World War II to the jungles of Vietnam and the frozen hills of Korea, these American POWs endured the unimaginable. They faced starvation, isolation, pain, and the constant shadow of death. And yet, they found ways to survive, holding on to faith, camaraderie, and sheer willpower. Their experiences remind us of the cost of war, not just in terms of lives lost, but in the scars carried by those who return. These soldiers' stories are not just history. They are a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the sacrifices made in the name of freedom. History remembers those who endured. Let their stories guide us, inspire us, and remind us of the price of conflict. If these stories moved you, share them. Leave a comment honoring these veterans, and subscribe for more untold stories of courage and survival. Let's ensure that these voices are never forgotten. And if you want to hear from more American heroes, watch the linked video to listen to testimonies of those deployed overseas during the Vietnam War.
He was a Marine at 14, survived not one but 2 grenades, became the youngest Medal of Honor recipient since the Civil War, dodged a murder plot from his wife and kids, and was arrested for camping out in a field with drugs. And that only scrapes the surface of the story of Jack Lucas, a Marine whose life had more drama and action than any Hollywood movie. Jacqueline Jax Lucas was born in 1928 in the quiet, rural town of Plymouth, North Carolina. Life wasn't easy here. Jack grew up during the Great Depression, where the values of hard work, resilience, and self-reliance were necessary for survival. From a young age, Jack stood out. He was bold, determined, and had quite the rebellious streak. Whether it was testing his limits on the family farm or standing up to bullies at school, Jack had a toughness that went beyond his years. To him, challenges were something to run toward, not away from. But it wasn't until the attack on Pearl Harbor that Jack's purpose became clear. While most 13-year-olds were still dreaming of the future, Jack had already set his sights on something bigger. He wasn't content with just reading about the war in the papers. He wanted to be part of it. At just 14 years old, Jack made up his mind. He lied about his age and enlisted in the Marine Corps, determined to serve. It was a decision that marked him as one of the youngest Marines in World War II. But Jack didn't join the Marines to stay stateside or follow orders from behind a desk. From the very beginning, he was driven by one mission: to get into the fight, no matter what it took. At just 17, Jack's determination had only grown. He was done waiting for permission. So, when he saw a ship loading Marines for the front, he stowed himself away on board, bound for one of the most dangerous battlefields in the Pacific, without orders, without backup, and without a guarantee that he'd even make it off the ship. Jack spent the next month hiding on the USS Duell. He slept on deck or wherever he could, scrounging for food from mess hall scraps and carefully avoiding anyone who might discover him. When Jack finally revealed himself to the ship's captain, they were only days away from the battlefront. By that point, there was no turning back. Instead of being sent home, Jack was allowed to stay, officially joining the Marines bound for Iwo Jima. When Jack and his fellow Marines arrived at Iwo Jima in February 1945, they were stepping onto one of the bloodiest battlefields of World War II. Spread across the island were over 20,000 Japanese soldiers, deeply entrenched in a network of bunkers, hidden tunnels, and fortified gun emplacements. They had spent years turning Iwo Jima into a fortress, prepared to fight to the last man. Within minutes of the landing, the brutal reality set in. The Japanese forces had orders to let the Americans come in close before unleashing a deadly barrage. As Jack and his unit moved onto the beach, they were met with relentless artillery, machine gun fire, and mortars. The beach turned into a nightmare. Bodies lay everywhere as the Marines pushed forward under a hailstorm of bullets. Every inch of ground was paid for in blood. And here was Jack Lucas, just 17 years old, facing an unthinkable horror. He had stowed away to be here, driven by a need to serve on the front lines, but nothing could have prepared him for the hell he would endure in the coming days. Just a day after landing on Iwo Jima, Jack Lucas and his fire team found themselves moving cautiously through a narrow trench. Suddenly, Japanese soldiers launched a surprise attack on Jack's team. In an instant, 2 grenades landed in the trench, right at their feet. In that split second, Jack made an unthinkable choice. Without hesitation, he threw himself onto one grenade and pulled the other under his body, determined to shield his fellow Marines from the blast. The explosion was devastating. Jack's body absorbed the full impact of both grenades, shattering his ribs, tearing through his flesh, and leaving him covered in shrapnel. Somehow, miraculously, he was still alive. Jack Lucas, barely 17 years old, had willingly given up his life in those split seconds to save his team. Against all odds, he survived the blast that should have killed him. On October 5, 1945, Jack Lucas stood before President Harry S. Truman at the White House. In a solemn ceremony, he received the Medal of Honor, the youngest Marine to ever be awarded this honor since the Civil War. President Truman reportedly told Jack, "I'd rather have this medal than be president." It was a recognition not just of Jack's bravery on Iwo Jima, but of the unthinkable sacrifice he was willing to make for his fellow Marines. Jack's heroism became a symbol of courage and sacrifice for Marines and service members across the nation. His story proved that true bravery comes not from age or rank, but from the willingness to put others above oneself, even in the face of death. But Jack's story was just getting started. After the war, Jack earned a business degree from High Point University before enlisting in the United States Army as a paratrooper to conquer his fear of heights. During one of his training jumps, both of Jack's parachutes failed. He plummeted to the ground, surviving a near-fatal impact that would have taken down most men. But Jack walked away, once again proving that nothing, not even gravity, could keep him down. After his military career, Jack continued to build his legacy in new ways. He settled down, married, and started a family, raising several children. Never one to sit still, he also founded a successful chain of butcher shops in Maryland, applying the same grit and determination he'd shown on the battlefield to his life as a businessman. Fast forward to 1977. Jack Lucas, now a successful businessman and family man, thought he'd seen the worst the world had to offer. But nothing could prepare him for the betrayal he would face in his own home. In June of that year, Maryland State Police informed Jack that his second wife, Earlene Lucas, along with her son-in-law and daughter, had been conspiring to kill him. Their motive? Money. According to police, the 3 family members had tried to hire a hitman to kill Jack and collect on his life insurance. Little did they know, the hitman they contacted was actually an undercover state policeman. Earlene, her daughter Becky, and Becky's husband Jerry were all arrested and charged with conspiracy and assault with intent to commit murder. They were held in custody at Prince George's County Detention Center, awaiting trial. To this day, the details around the situation remain foggy. Jack promptly divorced Earlene. However, he did argue in her favor during trial. We will never fully know what happened. By the 1980s, life had taken a tough turn for Jack Lucas. After surviving battles on and off the field, he was now living off his life savings, struggling to make ends meet. In 1985, things went from bad to worse when Jack's mobile home burned down, leaving him without shelter. With nowhere to go, Jack resorted to camping on a friend's property in Elkton, Maryland, setting up a tent in a cornfield. But soon, this quiet retreat turned into a new nightmare. On August 28, 1985, Maryland State Police discovered marijuana plants growing in the field where Jack was camping. Although Jack insisted he had no connection to the plants, he was charged with unlawful manufacture and possession of controlled substances. Jack denied the charges, explaining that he didn't even smoke cigarettes, let alone marijuana. Local authorities eventually realized Jack had no involvement in the illegal plants. Given his cooperation with the investigation, and the recognition of his heroic military service, the state of Maryland decided to drop all charges. Despite the struggles and hardships of his later years, Jack Lucas never lost his fighting spirit. By the early 2000s, Jack had found peace. In 2006, he received one last honor from the Marine Corps. Alongside 15 other Marine Medal of Honor recipients, Jack was presented the Medal of Honor flag in a ceremony at the White House. In front of over 1,000 Marines, family, and friends, Jack's words reflected the pride and renewed strength he felt. "To have these young men here in our presence," he said, "it just rejuvenates this old heart of mine. I love the Corps even more knowing that my country is defended by such fine young people." 2 years later, Jack Lucas passed away at the age of 80, surrounded by his family. It was a peaceful end for a man who had spent his life on the edge of danger, surviving battles both on the field and off. Jack Lucas's life was more than a collection of battles and triumphs. It was a testament to the power of courage, of sacrifice, and of never giving up, even when the odds were stacked against you. From the trenches of Iwo Jima to the challenges he faced later in life, Jack proved time and again that true heroism doesn't fade, it only grows stronger. During the height of World War II, deep in the unforgiving jungles of Burma, a brave group of American soldiers embarked on one of the most grueling missions of the war. Known as Merrill's Marauders, this elite unit faced impossible odds, marching over 1,000 miles on foot through treacherous terrain, with limited supplies and facing constant threats from the enemy. These men displayed unparalleled heroism, fighting not only the Japanese forces, but also battling extreme heat, disease, and exhaustion. Yet, despite their incredible sacrifice and bravery, not one member of Merrill's Marauders received the Medal of Honor. Today, we're going to tell the story of these unsung heroes, how they overcame impossible odds, and why their extraordinary bravery remains one of the most overlooked chapters in American military history. In 1944, the Allied forces were locked in a brutal struggle across the Pacific. Japan had fortified its grip on Southeast Asia, including Burma, a key region for its strategic position and supply routes. For the Allies, securing Burma was crucial. Not only would it cut off Japanese supply lines, but it would also pave the way for reclaiming lost territory and opening a supply route to support Chinese forces fighting the Japanese. The challenge? Burma's treacherous landscape was dominated by dense jungles, mountainous terrain, and rivers swollen by monsoon rains. The Japanese army held strong positions throughout the region, making conventional assaults nearly impossible. What the Allies needed was a specialized unit that could operate independently behind enemy lines, cut off supplies, and weaken Japanese defenses from within. That's where Merrill's Marauders came in. Officially known as the 5,307th Composite Unit, their mission was to penetrate deep into enemy territory, marching over 1,000 miles through some of the most inhospitable terrain imaginable. They had to carry everything on their backs: food, ammunition, and medical supplies, all while avoiding detection by Japanese forces. Resupply drops were scarce, and the Marauders often found themselves on half rations, forced to make do with whatever they could scavenge. The sweltering heat, monsoon rains, and thick jungle foliage made every step a battle. Disease spread quickly, with many soldiers falling ill to malaria, typhus, and dysentery. Despite these overwhelming obstacles, Merrill's Marauders pushed forward, determined to complete a mission that many thought impossible. These jungle conditions, combined with relentless combat fire, kept the unit's medic, Galen C. Kittleson, very busy. In the midst of this unforgiving environment, Kittleson's role became one of the most critical in the Marauders. As the men pressed deeper into enemy territory, they relied on him for survival. Kittleson was the unit's lifeline, often rushing directly into enemy attacks to aid his injured comrades. He bravely put himself in harm's way to treat the wounded and evacuated the most severely injured. His selflessness was a testament to his dedication, earning him the deep respect of every man in his unit. Kittleson's courage was crucial to the Marauders' survival, but he wasn't alone in his bravery. Among the soldiers who earned a lasting reputation in the unit was Staff Sergeant Gilbert Horn Sr. As the Marauders ventured deeper into Japanese-held territory, Horn's sharpshooting skills became invaluable. Horn's steady aim and sharp eye often made the difference between life and death. He was known for his ability to take out enemy positions with precision, covering his fellow soldiers as they advanced or made their way out of dangerous situations. Time and again, Horn volunteered for some of the most perilous assignments, whether it was holding a position under heavy fire or taking point on a reconnaissance mission into hostile territory. In one unforgettable encounter, Horn found himself facing down a wave of enemy troops. With his unit at risk of being overrun, he held his ground, alone and vulnerable, providing suppressing fire that allowed his comrades to withdraw to safety. He was more than just a sharpshooter, he was a steadfast protector, willing to face the worst that war had to offer to ensure his unit's survival. Both of these heroes went through hell. Both of these heroes showed immense bravery and courage, and yet neither of them was awarded the Medal of Honor. Throughout their mission, Merrill's Marauders faced fierce engagements that would test their mettle and endurance. One of the most grueling encounters occurred at the village of Wallabum, where the Marauders launched a surprise attack on Japanese forces, aiming to disrupt their supply lines and weaken their stronghold. In this high-stakes battle, the Marauders deployed a combination of surprise tactics and sheer grit. It was here that soldiers like James E. Richardson showcased his bravery. Richardson, a skilled scout, took point in leading his platoon into enemy territory, navigating through thick foliage and booby-trapped paths. Richardson's job was to secure a path for his fellow soldiers, even as they came under heavy fire. He repeatedly put himself in harm's way to ensure his unit could advance safely, often making split-second decisions that could mean the difference between success and failure. After their victory at Wallabum, the Marauders pressed on, only to face one of their toughest challenges yet, the Battle of Mpumga. Here they found themselves surrounded by Japanese forces, outnumbered and under siege for 2 weeks. In these dire conditions, the Marauders dug in and fought with everything they had. Among them was a soldier known for his relentless spirit, Vincent Curl. Despite the harrowing circumstances, Curl took it upon himself to bolster the defenses. He moved from trench to trench, rallying his comrades and returning fire at every opportunity. Even as food and water ran out, Curl's resilience helped to keep morale high. Despite the constant danger, exhaustion, and heavy losses, Merrill's Marauders pushed forward through the unforgiving jungles of Burma. After months of grueling combat, they reached their final objective, the airfield at Myitkina. Capturing this airfield was crucial for the Allies, as it secured a strategic foothold in the region and disrupted Japanese control over Burma. The Marauders' mission was a success, but it came at a tremendous cost. Out of the original 3,000 men who embarked on this journey, only about 200 remained combat effective by the time they reached Myitkina. Many had fallen in battle or succumbed to the relentless diseases that plagued their march. Those who survived were physically and mentally exhausted, having sacrificed so much for their mission. Yet despite all this sacrifice and success, not a single member of Merrill's Marauders were awarded a Medal of Honor. The question is, why? How could such extraordinary acts of bravery go unrecognized with the nation's highest honor? One possible reason lies in the chaos of war itself. In the midst of relentless combat, paperwork and formal recognition can fall by the wayside. The Marauders' mission was unique. They operated far behind enemy lines with little direct contact with higher command. They had no time to stop, no time to send reports, and often no one to document the details of their heroics as they pushed deeper into enemy territory. Bureaucracy may have played its part as well. The nature of their mission, isolated, secretive, and brutal, meant that by the time the Marauders completed their objective, the focus was already shifting to other fronts in the war. The wheels of military recognition, slow even in the best of times, may have simply moved on without them. No matter the reason, it's wrong. Countless members of Merrill's Marauders laid their lives on the line, facing harrowing odds and pushing themselves to the limits for the mission. They endured the unimaginable, and each of them deserves to be remembered, but as heroes. Their courage, resourcefulness, and sacrifice directly led to Allied successes in Burma and eventually the war at large. They fought through relentless jungles, engaged in deadly close-quarters combat, and braved the punishing conditions with a determination that few could match. For Merrill's Marauders, it wasn't about medals or accolades. It was about duty, about fighting for the soldier next to you, and about completing a mission that others thought impossible. But even so, their actions warrant the highest honor we can give, and it's a tragedy that they were denied it. It's time we honor them for the heroes they were, recognizing not only their collective achievements, but also the individual acts of bravery that make their story unforgettable. As we look back on their journey, we're reminded that true heroism isn't measured by medals or ceremonies. It's measured by the willingness to face the unknown, to make sacrifices without expectation, and to stand shoulder to shoulder with your fellow soldiers, no matter the cost. The legacy of Merrill's Marauders is one of selflessness, strength, and an unyielding commitment to duty. Their story may have been overlooked, but their bravery remains an indelible part of our nation's history. It's up to us to remember them, to honor their sacrifices, and to ensure that their courage is never forgotten. Share this video with a friend to spread their story, and subscribe to learn about more American heroes.
Courage under fire, leadership against the odds, and sacrifices that echo through history. Meet 5 World War II American heroes whose valor transcends time. Meet Captain John P. Cromwell, a submariner whose steadfast resolve saved vital secrets. During a critical mission in enemy waters, Cromwell faced capture as his submarine was compromised. Knowing the risks, he chose to scuttle his submarine, sealing his fate to protect the lives of his crew and crucial intelligence. His decisive action preserved pivotal wartime secrets. Cromwell's sacrifice during the height of World War II earned him a posthumous Medal of Honor, commemorating his profound bravery and selflessness. Meet Technical Sergeant Leonard A. Funk, who turned the tide of battle during the freezing Battle of the Bulge with audacity and valor. Faced with the capture of his unit, Funk unleashed a surprising counterattack. His quick thinking and daring led to the capture of 80 German soldiers, showcasing his strategic genius and raw courage. His actions not only saved his fellow soldiers, but also demonstrated the impact of fearless leadership under pressure. Meet First Lieutenant Jack Lummis, a Marine officer whose gallantry at Iwo Jima became a legend. Leading his men from the front, Lummis charged enemy fortifications under heavy fire. Despite severe wounds, he rallied his men and continued to push forward, ultimately sacrificing his life for the mission. His valiant efforts were crucial in securing victory at a critical point of the battle. Lummis was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously, a tribute to his extraordinary heroism and dedication. Meet Staff Sergeant Reuben Rivers, an armored unit commander whose unyielding spirit shone brightly in the European theater. Despite suffering serious injuries, Rivers refused to withdraw. His leadership during a fierce counterattack inspired his men, as he chose to face formidable enemy forces head-on. Rivers was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, honored for his exceptional bravery and the ultimate sacrifice he made for his comrades. Meet Second Lieutenant LCS Ott, a pioneering flight nurse whose innovation transformed wartime medical evacuations. Ott undertook the first successful intercontinental air evacuation, meticulously planning and executing a mission that spanned continents to bring wounded soldiers home. Her groundbreaking work not only saved countless lives, but also laid the foundation for modern air medical evacuation practices, earning her the Air Medal. From the depths of the ocean to the skies above, these 5 heroes exemplified the highest virtues of service and sacrifice. Their stories inspire us to remember the costs of freedom and the valor that defends it. Join us in honoring their legacy. Subscribe for more stories of heroism and history.
October 5th, 1813. Smoke fills the air as musket fire echoes across the battlefield. On one side, American forces push forward, determined to secure control of the Northwest Territory. On the other, a coalition of Native American warriors and British troops make their last desperate stand. Amid the chaos, one figure stands out. Tecumseh, the legendary Shawnee leader, rallies his warriors with unshakable determination, but as the battle rages, a single gunshot rings out, and with it, Tecumseh falls. The Battle of the Thames ends in an American victory, but Tecumseh's death is far more than the loss of a great leader. It's the death of a dream of a unified native confederacy capable of stopping the relentless expansion of the United States. But how did it come to this? How did Tecumseh rise to become the most feared and respected Native American leader of his time? And why did his death mark a turning point that would change the course of American history forever? To understand, we have to go back to the early 19th century, when the young United States was a fragile experiment, hungry for land and power, and Tecumseh's vision threatened everything. Born in 1768 in what is now Ohio, Tecumseh came of age during a time of profound upheaval. As settlers pushed westward, they brought devastation to native lands, lives, and cultures. By the time Tecumseh was a young man, his people had endured countless losses, from the destruction of villages to the erosion of their autonomy. But Tecumseh was not one to surrender to despair. Charismatic and fiercely intelligent, he envisioned something no native leader had attempted before: a confederacy, a united alliance of tribes that could resist American expansion as one. Tecumseh believed that native land was sacred, owned collectively by all tribes, and could not be sold without the consent of every nation. This idea struck at the heart of U.S. land policies, which relied on treaties signed with individual tribes to seize territory piece by piece. Alongside his brother Tenskwatawa, known as the Prophet, Tecumseh rallied tribes across the Midwest. While the Prophet inspired spiritual revival, Tecumseh focused on military and political unification. Traveling thousands of miles, he built alliances with tribes from the Great Lakes to the Deep South, urging them to stand together against the American tide. By 1811, Tecumseh's confederacy was growing in strength, but unity came with risks. The United States was watching, and they saw Tecumseh as a direct threat to their expansionist ambitions. By the early 1810s, Tecumseh's confederacy had become a thorn in the side of the United States government. His unifying vision was more than just a native resistance movement. It was a direct challenge to U.S. dominance in the Northwest Territory, a region vital to America's territorial expansion. Government officials were alarmed by Tecumseh's ability to bring together tribes that had long been divided by geography, language, and culture. They understood the implications of his confederacy. A united native force could stall or even reverse the westward expansion of settlers. President James Madison and other leaders were acutely aware of Tecumseh's growing influence. Reports from military officers and frontier agents painted him as a brilliant strategist and an unmatched orator. In private discussions, Tecumseh was described as a dangerous leader, whose ambitions posed a threat to the very foundation of the young republic. The US government's fears weren't entirely misplaced. Tecumseh wasn't just uniting tribes, he was also forging an alliance with Britain, which still held sway in Canada. As tensions between the US and Britain edged closer to war, Tecumseh's confederacy became a vital part of British strategy in North America. American military leaders, including future President William Henry Harrison, began devising plans to neutralize Tecumseh before his movement could reach full strength. Harrison, who had clashed with Tecumseh during a tense meeting in 1810, saw him as a personal rival. In 1811, the growing tension between Tecumseh's Confederacy and the U.S. government erupted into open conflict. While Tecumseh was away in the south, rallying more tribes to join his alliance, his brother Tenskwatawa, the Prophet, remained behind to hold the line at Prophetstown, the spiritual and strategic heart of the Confederacy. William Henry Harrison, now the governor of the Indiana Territory, saw an opportunity. With Tecumseh absent, Harrison led an army of over 1,000 men to confront the Confederacy at Prophetstown. His goal was simple: to strike a decisive blow that would dismantle Tecumseh's movement before it could grow any stronger. The Prophet, confident in his spiritual guidance and the strength of his warriors, made a fateful decision. On the night of November 6, 1811, he launched a surprise attack on Harrison's camp. But the U.S. forces were prepared. A fierce battle broke out in the early hours of the morning, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. By dawn, it was clear that the Confederacy had been defeated. Harrison's men burned Prophetstown to the ground, destroying the spiritual center of Tecumseh's alliance. While the Battle of Tippecanoe wasn't a complete military victory for the U.S., it shattered the confidence of many tribes in Tenskwatawa's leadership and weakened the unity of the Confederacy. For Harrison, the clash at Prophetstown was a personal and political victory, a chance to solidify his reputation as a defender of American expansion. But for Tecumseh, it was a devastating setback. When he returned to find his people scattered and their base destroyed, his vision of a united Confederacy seemed more distant than ever. Yet Tecumseh was not a man to surrender easily. Prophetstown may have been lost, but his resolve to resist U.S. expansion only grew stronger, and soon a larger conflict would provide him with the opportunity to fight back. As the War of 1812 erupted between the United States and Britain, Tecumseh found a powerful ally in the British Army. By 1812, Britain had a vested interest in stopping U.S. expansion into the Northwest Territory. Tecumseh's Confederacy offered them a critical advantage, a united native force that could disrupt American efforts and defend British-held Canada. The alliance between Tecumseh and the British was forged in shared opposition to the United States, and Tecumseh quickly proved himself indispensable. At the Siege of Detroit, Tecumseh's leadership was instrumental. His warriors, using guerrilla tactics and psychological warfare, helped the British capture the American garrison without firing a shot. Tecumseh's bold maneuvers and commanding presence made him a feared and respected figure on the battlefield. Over the next year, Tecumseh's forces fought tirelessly in key battles across the Northwest. But Tecumseh, ever the realist, knew what was coming. He reportedly told his warriors, "The Great Spirit is calling us, and I am going to the big council fire of my nation." By 1813, the tide of the War of 1812 had turned against Tecumseh and his British allies. American forces, led by General William Henry Harrison, had retaken Detroit and were now pressing deep into British-held territory. The stage was set for a final, decisive confrontation, the Battle of the Thames. On October 5, 1813, Harrison's troops, numbering over 3,000, engaged a much smaller British and native force along the Thames River in Ontario. Tecumseh and his warriors, though outnumbered and poorly equipped, stood their ground, knowing this battle could determine the fate of their resistance. The British, however, had little appetite for a prolonged fight. When the battle began, their lines quickly broke, leaving Tecumseh and his warriors to face the advancing Americans alone. Tecumseh, ever the fearless leader, refused to retreat. He rallied his men, charging into the fray with unshakable resolve. Amid the chaos, Tecumseh was struck down, killed by a gunshot. For Harrison, the battle was a resounding victory. The American forces had crushed the last major native resistance in the Northwest Territory, securing control of the region and cementing Harrison's reputation as a hero. But for Tecumseh's people, the Battle of the Thames marked the end of an era. And for our country, it changed the course of history. With Tecumseh gone, his dream of a united native confederacy collapsed. Tribes that had once stood together began to fracture, each left to face the overwhelming force of American expansion alone. Without a strong centralized resistance, native nations were systematically pushed off their lands, clearing the way for settlers to claim the Northwest Territory. This victory was pivotal for the United States. Control of the Northwest Territory solidified America's dominance in the region, opening vast tracts of land for farming, trade, and settlement. It also reinforced the young nation's belief in manifest destiny, the idea that America was destined to expand from coast to coast, regardless of the cost to those who stood in its way. October 5th, 1813 wasn't just the day Tecumseh fell, it was the day a chapter of American history came to a close. His death marked the end of a powerful vision, but it also signaled the beginning of a new era for the United States, one defined by rapid expansion, unrelenting ambition, and profound loss. As we look back on the Battle of the Thames and Tecumseh's legacy, we're left with a question. What lessons can we learn from the choices that shaped America's future? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to join us as we explore more pivotal moments that defined our world. Together, let's keep military history alive.
Imagine young men just out of their teens, leaving behind their families, dreams, and peaceful lives to enter the chaos of World War I. They faced unimaginable horrors, relentless shelling, suffocating gas attacks, and the constant presence of death. Yet, amid this brutality, some soldiers wielded pens as skillfully as rifles. They transformed their anguish, courage, and reflections into timeless poetry, gifting us with haunting and beautiful verses that transcend the battlefield. These soldier poets were not only fighters, they were the voices of their generation, shaping our understanding of the war today. From Wilfred Owen's tragic poignancy to Siegfried Sassoon's sharp critiques, Rupert Brooke's romantic idealism, and Robert Graves's unflinching realism, each poet contributed something unique to the literary world. Join us as we explore their lives, works, and enduring legacies. Wilfred Owen, the poet of pity. Born in Shropshire, England. On March 1893, Wilfred Owen grew up passionate about poetry and the arts. After teaching in France, he enlisted in 1915. Serving as a second lieutenant in the Manchester Regiment, he was wounded and diagnosed with shell shock in 1917, where Owens was then treated at Craiglockhart War Hospital, where he met Siegfried Sassoon. Sassoon became his mentor, inspiring Owen to write some of his most celebrated poems, including Anthem for Doomed Youth and Dulce et Decorum Est. Owen's work stands out for its vivid, uncompromising portrayal of war's brutality, challenging romanticized views of conflict. A recipient of the Military Cross for bravery, Owen returned to the front in 1918, but was killed on November 4th, just a week before the armistice. Though few of his poems were published during his lifetime, Owen's posthumous collection cemented his legacy as one of the greatest voices of World War I, remembered for his poignant compassion and stark realism.
Dulce et Decorum Est by Wilfred Owen. Bent double, like old beggars under sacks. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5-9s that dropped behind. Gas, gas, quick boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. in all my dreams before my helpless sight. He plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning, if in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the wide eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud, of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest. To children ardent for some desperate glory, the old late dulce et decorum est pro patria mori.
Siegfried Sassoon, the voice of protest. Siegfried Sassoon, born in 1886 and passed away in 1977, he was born into a wealthy English-Jewish family and led a privileged life of poetry and fox hunting before World War I. Sassoon joined the Royal Welsh Fusiliers when war broke out, earning the Military Cross for bravery. His experiences on the front lines fueled his anger at the war's senseless prolongation, leading him to pen an open letter of protest, accusing leaders of deliberately extending the conflict. Diagnosed with shell shock in 1917, Sassoon was hospitalized, where he continued to write. Sassoon's poetry, collected in Counterattack and Other Poems, as well as the War Poems of Siegfried Sassoon, is known for its harsh realism and biting satire. Works like Glory of Women critique society's romanticized view of war, while others vividly capture the horrors of trench life. Though controversial, his poems resonated deeply, offering an unflinching view of soldiers' experiences and a fierce condemnation of the war's futility. After the war, Sassoon turned to pacifism and politics, writing autobiographical novels such as Memoirs of an Infantry Officer, which was hailed as a masterpiece of wartime literature. Later in life, he embraced Catholicism, though his spiritual poetry was less celebrated than his earlier works. Sassoon remains a pivotal figure in war poetry, and his searing critiques are still as poignant today as they were a century ago.
Glory of Women by Siegfried Sassoon. You love us when we're heroes, home on leave, or wounded in a mentionable place. You worship decoration. You believe that chivalry redeems the war's disgrace. You make us shells. You listen with delight, by tales of dirt and danger fondly thrilled. You crown our distant ardors while we fight, and mourn our laureled memories when we're killed. You can't believe that British troops retire when hell's last horror breaks them, and they run, trampling the terrible corpses blind with blood. O German mother dreaming by the fire, while you are knitting socks to send your son, his face is trodden deeper in the mud.
Rupert Brooke, the poet of idealism and patriotism. Born on August 3, 1887 in Rugby, England, Rupert Brooke became one of the most famous poets of the early 20th century. Known for his good looks and charm, he was admired for his talent and patriotic fervor. A prominent figure in Cambridge's intellectual circles, Brooke's poetry often celebrated nature, love, and romantic views of life. His early works were part of the Georgian poetry movement, emphasizing romanticized rural life. Brooke joined the Royal Navy Volunteer Reserve when World War I broke out, and his wartime sonnets, especially the 1914 sequence, became iconic. His most famous poem, The Soldier, embodies the hopeful patriotism of the time, presenting death in battle as a noble sacrifice. Brooke's death from blood poisoning in 1915 at age 27, while en route to the Gallipoli campaign, sealed his legacy as a martyr for his country. Though some critics later deemed his work overly sentimental, Brooke's poetry captured the spirit of pre-war England and remains a key part of literary history.
The Soldier by Rupert Brooke. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be, in that rich earth, a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shaped, made aware, gave once her flowers to love, her ways to roam, a body of England's breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by sons of home, and think this heart all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind, no less. Give somewhere back the thoughts by England given, her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, and laughter learnt of friends, and gentleness, in hearts at peace under an English heaven.
Robert Graves, the poet of war and myth. Robert Graves, born in 1895 in Wimbledon, London, was a poet, novelist, and scholar whose work captured the complex realities of war and its aftermath. Serving as a captain in the Royal Welsh Fusiliers during World War I, Graves experienced firsthand the horrors of battle, including a near-fatal injury at the Battle of the Somme. His early poetry, like Over the Brazier, boldly confronted the brutal truths of war, standing out for its raw realism. While much of his writing in the 1910s grappled with these horrors, Graves also turned to themes of innocence and peace, contrasting the violence of war with memories of a simpler, more idyllic past. This dichotomy of experience is powerfully expressed in his later works, especially in Last Day of Leave, a poem written long after the war's end. The poem reflects on the fleeting nature of peace and the haunting shadow of war, evoking the sense of a soldier's final moments of calm before returning to the front. It captures the internal conflict of a man torn between the hope of escape and the inescapable pull of duty. Through the lens of his own experience, Graves portrays the sense of resignation and inevitability felt by so many soldiers, making Last Day of Leave a poignant meditation on the enduring scars of war, even in moments of apparent tranquility.
We five looked out over the moor, at rough hills blurred with haze and a still sea. Our tragic day bountiful from the first. We would spend it by the Lily Lake, high in a fold beyond the farthest ridge, following the cart track till it faded out, the time of berries and bellheather. Yet all that morning nobody went by. But shepherds and one old man carting turfs. We were in love, he with her, she with him, and I, the youngest one, the odd man out, as deep in love with a yet nameless muse. No cloud larks and heath butterflies, and herons undisturbed fishing the streams. A slow, cool breeze that hardly stirred the grass. When we hurried down the rocky slope, a flock of ewes galloping off in terror. There shone the water lilies, yellow and white. Deep water and a shelving bank. Off went our clothes and in we went, all five, diving like trout between the lily groves. The basket had been nobly filled. Wine and fresh rolls, chicken and pineapple. Our braggadocio under threat of war. The fire on which we boiled our kettle. We fed with ling and rotten blackthorn root, and the coffee tasted memorably of peat. Two of us might stray off together, but never less than three kept by the fire, focus of our uncertain destinies. We spoke little, our minds in tune. A sigh or laugh would settle any theme, the sun so hard it made the rocks quiver. But when it rolled down level with us, 4 pairs of eyes sought mine as if appealing for a blind fate aversive afterward. Do you remember the Lily Lake? We were all there, all 5 of us in love, not one yet killed, widowed, or broken-hearted.
Through their courage and creativity, these soldier poets captured the essence of war in a way that transcends time. Their words offer us a window into the raw emotional truths of their experiences, moments of horror, moments of hope, and everything in between. Through their poetry, we understand the war they fought and the emotional and psychological toll it took on them, shaping their world in art. From Owen's stark realism to Sassoon's powerful critiques, Brooks' romantic idealism, and Graves' haunting reflections on peace and loss, each poet left us with a legacy that continues to resonate. These voices are not just echoes of the past, they remain relevant today, reminding us of the cost of war and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Which poem resonated most with you? Is there a soldier poet whose work we didn't cover that you'd like to share? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and keep their voices alive. Pete Hegseth, a decorated combat veteran, a fierce advocate for veterans, and now President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense. But not everyone is on board. Critics and pundits have been quick to attack Hegseth, spreading myths and misconceptions about his qualifications and character. Today, we're breaking down the most common myths about Pete Hegseth and showing you why the critics are wrong. From his military experience to his leadership in the fight for veterans' rights, we'll show you the facts, and why Pete Hegseth just might be the most qualified defense secretary in history. It's time to set the record straight. One of the most ridiculous claims we've heard is that Pete Hegseth lacks military experience. Let's be clear, this couldn't be further from the truth. Hegseth served as an officer in the Army National Guard, deploying multiple times to Guantanamo Bay, Iraq, and Afghanistan. His service earned him the Bronze Star Medal and the Combat Infantryman Badge, prestigious honors that recognize bravery and leadership in combat. This is a man who's led soldiers in some of the most challenging environments imaginable. From overseeing detainee operations at Guantanamo to leading combat patrols in Iraq, Hegseth's first-hand experience gives him a deep understanding of the realities of modern warfare. And let's not forget, the Secretary of Defense doesn't need to be a retired four-star general. In fact, many of the most effective defense secretaries have come from civilian or reserve military backgrounds. What matters is their ability to lead, understand the challenges facing our troops, and make decisions that strengthen America's defense. Pete Hegseth checks every one of those boxes. So, the next time someone says Pete Hegseth doesn't have enough military experience, remind them of the Bronze Star, the Combat Infantryman Badge, and the deployments that shaped his career. It's interesting how critics can't seem to pick a lane. First they say Pete Hegseth doesn't have enough military experience, an absurd claim we've already debunked. Now, they're saying he doesn't have enough government experience to lead the Department of Defense. So, which is it? It's neither. While Pete Hegseth hasn't held a traditional government office, he's spent years working at the intersection of policy and military service. As the leader of organizations like Vets for Freedom and Concerned Veterans for America, Hegseth has influenced national defense and veterans policy, advocating for better care for our troops and holding government leaders accountable. Through this work, he's gained a deep understanding of how Washington operates, both its strengths and its flaws. And his leadership has led to tangible changes, from improving veterans' care to advancing military reforms. Critics also overlook the fact that the Secretary of Defense isn't required to have years of government experience. Some of the most impactful Secretaries of Defense have come from outside traditional government roles, bringing fresh perspectives and a focus on results. Whether it's on the battlefield or in the policy arena, Pete Hegseth has proven time and again that he has what it takes to lead America's defense. The real question is, why are the critics so eager to ignore the facts? Another baseless accusation thrown at Pete Hegseth is that he holds extremist views. Critics claim his positions are radical, out of touch, or even dangerous. But what do these so-called extremist beliefs actually look like? Pete Hegseth believes in a strong national defense. He's been vocal about the need to focus on combat readiness and ensuring that America's military is prepared to face modern threats. He's raised concerns that some policies and priorities could distract from the military's core mission, protecting our nation. Hegseth also believes in putting America's interests first, prioritizing the safety of our citizens, the strength of our borders, and the security of our troops. He's called for leaders who won't apologize for defending American values, and for a military that isn't bogged down by bureaucracy. So let's ask the real question. Do these sound like extremist views, or do they sound like the beliefs of someone who puts America first? Is it radical to demand a strong, prepared military? Is it dangerous to believe in protecting our troops and focusing on national security? Pete Hegseth's positions aren't extreme, they're principled. They reflect the core values that have kept America strong, safe, and free. Let's talk about the infamous axe-throwing incident, a favorite talking point for critics. Some claim it's evidence of Pete Hegseth's recklessness, but let's break it down. In 2015, during a live segment on Fox and Friends, Hegseth threw an axe at a target as part of a fun demonstration. Unfortunately, the axe missed the target and hit a member of the West Point Hellcats band who was positioned behind the target. Here's what the critics won't tell you. The entire segment was set up by the production team. The drummer was positioned directly behind the target, a safety oversight that should never have happened. The incident wasn't an act of recklessness. It was an unfortunate accident during a live broadcast. Hegseth immediately expressed his regret and concern for the drummer, who thankfully wasn't seriously injured. Both Fox News and the production team reviewed their safety procedures to ensure this kind of mishap wouldn't happen again. If anyone was to blame, it was the production team. But let's be real, bringing up the axe incident as a critique of Hegseth's qualifications is nothing more than a cheap shot. The facts speak for themselves. Pete Hegseth is a leader, a veteran, and an advocate for America's military, not a reckless thrill seeker. Another misleading claim about Pete Hegseth is that he opposes diversity in the military. Critics paint him as someone against inclusion, but the reality is far different. Hegseth has never opposed diversity in the armed forces. In fact, he recognizes that America's military has always drawn strength from its diversity. What Hegseth does oppose is the idea of prioritizing diversity initiatives over national security. He's raised concerns about policies that shift the military's focus away from readiness, training, and combat effectiveness, policies that could ultimately weaken our armed forces. Hegseth has argued that the military's mission is to fight and win wars, not to become a testing ground for social experiments. He believes that readiness and effectiveness must come first, ensuring that every soldier, sailor, airman, and marine is equipped to do their job in the toughest conditions imaginable. So, does opposing policies that prioritize diversity over national security mean Hegseth opposes diversity itself? Absolutely not. It means he values a military built on merit, discipline, and the ability to defend our nation above all else. One of the most serious accusations leveled against Pete Hegseth is that he's been involved in criminal activities, including allegations of misconduct. The truth is, none of these accusations have been proven. Allegations of sexual misconduct were thoroughly investigated and no charges were ever filed. Hegseth has consistently denied any wrongdoing, and no credible evidence has ever emerged to support these claims. Pete Hegseth is a decorated combat veteran, a proven leader, and an advocate for America's armed forces. The allegations against him are unsubstantiated, and using them as a weapon to discredit his qualifications is both unfair and misleading. The critics may try to smear his reputation, but the facts speak for themselves. Pete Hegseth has dedicated his life to serving this nation and fighting for the people who wear the uniform. That's the record that matters.
Just like that, history has been rewritten. These are the soldiers they refused to teach you about, the warriors they tried to erase, but their stories live on, their sacrifices remembered. Because as long as we keep telling their stories, they will never be forgotten. Subscribe for more military stories. We'll see you next time.